All right, guys, this video here is more or less clarification for like other videos where I just made the comment, Marvel sucks. I'm gonna try to move it along. I actually just went ahead and like Googled some examples and picked and choose some of the things that were on my mind because when I say Marvel sucks, I've actually ended up having some accusations thrown at me, some nasty messages because of the current political climate that people don't seem to get. Some people, not all people. I've had people come to my defense saying that I've always been about storytelling. I'm not against the current climate of like things like diversity and stuff. I did a whole video showing positive diversity in comics over the years and even some bad examples of it. So and it seems like with the current climate and some of the conversations I've actually had of people who talk to me civilly and stuff like that in real life, the clarification is that it seems like if you talk, I said it before, when you talk about Marvel Comics, and they are a punching bag right now. Somebody came on and came off as soon as I said diversity on here and stuff. So yeah, I get it. Marvel's such an open target and a punching bag. There's tons of stuff out there that you can read about Marvel and how people feel about it and stuff, and the changes over the last 5 years in comic book shops and just all this really depressing stuff. We'll look at this as constructive criticism. Dr. Silver Age, hey, thanks, man. You're the one that I talked to yesterday that had me, go ahead and do this, and I think I can do this without a lot of venom. So basically, this video may go quick. I'll try to move it along, but this is one of those things I can talk about all day and give examples and stuff. So we'll look at this like constructive criticism. This is going to be about the writing techniques and the abandonment of character and a few things to specifically say there is no code here. The code that it seems like is if you say anything bad about Marvel, you're labeled with a whole bunch of isms, and we know what I'm talking about. Okay, work and comic book shops is going to affect comic book shops and people and families and stuff like that, and it's really bad for the hobby in general. But so this is like clarification. When I say Marvel sucks, here's why. Okay, so the storytelling to me has always been something that I've been fascinated with. I've always wished I had the talent to be a great writer. I've written things before because I've taken in college, I took creative writing. I had to take that. It was a semester. It didn't make me a great writer. It made me get in there and play around, and I was more of imagination than I was a technique. I'm really proud of some of I mean, I got praised for some of my ideas. I really kind of stuck out a little bit, but I read most of my life comic books, novels, books, things like that, movies, things like that. So, I kind of got it. I would write things that I would want to read, and I ended up writing a play. We all wrote plays in this one college class. But one of the things that killed me and why I didn't pursue it was the people that was teaching them. One was just this goofball that knew she had a pie job. The other person was like this failed writer who just killed me because he would come in and he would be an artist. And this is a college class, and this guy was like this one character had just come to life in my work. And I had to have him, I had to write that he was killed by a bus to get rid of him and stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know about this, so I didn't really pursue writing because some of these people freaked me out. I was young, probably a bit more judgmental and stuff, but it's still kind of weird. It was almost now that I see a lot of that was for attention than it was this is how they really were. And I think there's a lot of passive aggressive stuff for, teaching writing instead of being a writer. And I just, it was not what I expected. So what happened was this is sixth grade. I ended up reading Cyrano de Bergerac for sixth grade literature. And at that time, I'd come into and I started reading these things, and we had questions we had to answer for the report, and you had to do an oral report in front of the class. And this is where I finally had the words for things that I had noticed in some of my reading. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't like some freaking savant, but I was picking up that these writers were saying more. There's more to the story. I didn't have the words. I'm talking about things like symbolism, metaphors, foreshadowing, all these little techniques of writing. And this is like the mid 80s, so there's no internet. I had a little library in town and all this stuff. And what would happen is these stories would, it was like a mystery. It wasn't like so much a love of wanting to be a future writer. It was like there was a mystery. What does this mean? So these things would stay in my mind. And with Cyrano de Bergerac, for anybody, de Bergerac, I love how I'm talking like about literature with this big hick accent. I'm sure that, some people are going to laugh at the irony there. But with Cyrano de Bergerac, you had this character, this acclaimed play, and he was a big personality with a big nose and his big white plume. and the love of his life was Roxanne, but his friend was in love with her, so he hides in the bushes, and it's Cyrano that she's fallen in love with through this guy and all this stuff. But the question they were asking is, what does the plume mean? What does that white plume mean? What's the symbolism there in his nose and some things, right? So I just went ahead and Googled it because, like, for 2 or 3 years, I always wondered what that white plume mean, and it was the mystery. Okay, it was the mystery of it. So this is when I started like reading Alan Moore and started getting hold of Frank Miller and the Watchmen and stuff. And I started seeing these techniques in there. And then I was like rereading some of the little books, Wrinkle in Time, and a few things that I was reading and stuff, right? So I knew that there was some structure here, and exposition and stuff, right? And it was a little bit of a passion because, I read a lot, you know. And the more I learned, the more I could enjoy what I was reading. And then you get into those trappings where you overread things, or you start reading into things that aren't there. And, it was just fun. Different time, different era. I know there's Cliff Notes and Wikipedia and internet and stuff. And, I'm not going to stand here and say like I'm a dinosaur, but there was more of a challenge. So today, what did I do? I was remembering these stuff. I was talking about writing techniques, and I just Googled it, and it took me 10 minutes, just to find what I was looking for. And it could have went quicker, but I'm on my phone. So, for example, Cyrano de Bergerac's big nose, it was his insecurities in front of his face, why he couldn't find love. Was in his head, it was important to him because it loomed in front of him. His words and what he was, Roxanne fell in love with him anyway, and she didn't even know it. And then, like, they had things like leaves falling. They in Cyrano de Bergerac, they were pointing out how he was watching leaves falling and stuff, and it was decay, and it was foreshadowing Cyrano's own demise that he was watching. And then that white plume that drove me nuts. Yo! So that white plume that drove me nuts, it was about courage, nobility, and this is why he was a great fighter, because people went after him because of that. And when he abandoned the plume and stuff, it ended up being about cowardice and his insecurities and stuff, right? So this was great reading. It made it really good. So that's what I'm applying to Marvel in this. Let's look at this like constructive criticism, and I'll try to keep the venom out. Because once again, for everybody that's jumping in here, some of the things I've been accused of is talking in code. When I say Marvel sucks, they think I'm talking about some kind of politics and isms and stuff that's out there. And I'm really talking about bad storytelling. I don't care what the idea is, it's the execution and what you can do to be better writers. So here's some of the flaws I see in Marvel's writing. I picked and chose. Okay, I had some things in mind. I got on the internet, found some people that worded it better, just so I could get this out of the way. And I actually was asked to, come out and say that I'm not against this and I'm not against that. It's storytelling. And there's people who watched my videos for years that always got that, and I appreciate them, right? So the first thing with Marvel and stuff like this, I got 5 things here that I'm going to go over, right? Stories that go nowhere, low stakes with the characters in the stories. To me, what comes through in modern Marvel writing, Red Vitamin Blue, is self-congratulatory narcissism disguised as heroism. Valid point. The thing about writing is that it is subjective, and I don't want to put Marvel all under an umbrella. Thanks, Red Vitamin Blue. I can clarify here, right? I don't collect Marvel. Most of my friends have dropped Marvel. Comic book shops are doing it because the sales are so low and stuff. But there's every now and then you'll have somebody that's getting 1 or 2 books of Marvel. It's subjective, right? But there are rules that you can define what makes bad writing, what makes interesting writing. The first one I'm going to is the stories that go nowhere. You got to admit that some of the events that Marvel has had, they come out, they're a stunt. People have event fatigue. They have these big events that by the time you get to the next event, they're already telling you the next event, and there's no stakes that really stuck with these events. Siege, to me, Marvel Siege was the biggest waste of time ever because nothing really came out of it that stuck. You know what I mean? There's events where it happened, like Civil War in a year. I'm not going to say Civil War, but I've seen events where things happen and a year later nothing's changed. They're right back to it. Everybody's forgot that Peter Parker, is Spider-Man, things like that. So the stakes are actually low because they're going to retcon this stuff, or the stories are very mundane, a slow plot. Everybody's just been dying, and there's people who say they enjoy this. Don't get me wrong, but I've seen more people say they're just freaking glad that Secret Empire is over with. They start adding books to these events to get the dollar and stuff, right? That doesn't serve the story, okay? Predictable plot. When Secret Empire started, and I have the actual tweet from Nick Spencer saved on my phone, everybody was like, oh, Cosmic Cube's going to come into play and all this stuff, right? And they were like, no, no, it's off the table. Yet, from what I understand about Secret Empire, part of the plot was going around finding fragments of the Cosmic Cube, and it did come into play to a certain extent after Nick Spencer said no. It was predictable. Everybody knew. Everybody knew. They just knew. And you turn around and blame the fans for your writing techniques. In Secret Empire, there is actually this character named Barf, I think, and he actually regurgitates a part of the cosmic cube or something. I don't care if anybody corrects me on this. I really don't on this one. But when I saw that page online, I'm like, Nick Spencer is either trolling Marvel or the readers again, because he actually had a character regurgitate a boring plot point that everybody predicted. You know what I mean? Um, Crumble Point had a comment and disappeared, right? So they have predictable points and low stakes. These stories aren't really going to mean anything, and all that stuff. And then we come to like to the new characters. People, a comic book shop up in London, Ontario, I think, has been around 38, 39, almost 40 years, and they shut down. And the guy that shut the place down made the statement that it's what Marvel's been doing for 5 years. This is why they're a punching bag. But Marvel has, laid out a few things and stuff like that. And he pointed out what a lot of people have been saying. I mean, this isn't like one person coming up with the idea. Everybody's starting to see the same thing. People who go to see the Marvel movies, if they do get excited enough to a comic book shop, they go in and they cannot find their characters from the movies. They want the Steve Rogers. They want they want the real Thor. They want this. They want what they saw, the Bruce Banner Hulk and all. They go into the comic book shop and they can't find them. What they do find are characters that are borderline trope characters. They're very flat. There's not a lot of personality with them. They don't have a lot of motivation to them. There's not a lot of character traits to them. Marvel has this great history of all these characters having a backstory they can draw from, consistent personalities, things that people have grown up with these characters and they've been rounded off. These are characters who have been consistently the same, and the thing you do with them in the stories, you put them in uh, challenging circumstances. You have heroes defined by the villains. The villains need to be, uh, stronger than them. There's little textbook techniques you learn in a first year creative class of how you write a story and what you put your characters through. And Marvel doesn't have that. Black Panther and Storm. I'm seeing the Marvel ranting among readers on line forums and sites. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like put down what the storytelling is. That's kind of what this is about. But you go with their backstory. Black Panther. He was raised as royalty in Wakanda. He has a legacy of the Black Panther powers. He lived a life of social economic privilege, and then you have Storm. Storm had to grow up as a thief. And then when she was brought into the X-Men and stuff, she was being worshipped as a goddess. You know what I mean? Now, if you read what they've done with it and stuff, you wouldn't think you wouldn't have a clue that they were raised like that. You know what I mean? And the book getting canceled shows that people resonate with that. That's not Storm. That's not Black Panther. Black Panther and the crew have been canceled. It's a just the book. These were not the characters to put in that book. And people respond to that. There's a backstory with these characters that makes no sense. Storm when she came to America, it was Jean Grey that kind of like brought her in and took her shopping and showed her a different way of living and helping her adapt and to adjust and things like that. And when you watch how Storm progressed with the X-Men and stuff, all the way up to losing her powers and becoming uh, you know running. She was like the leader of the Morlocks and the X-Men by issue 201 and all that stuff. There was a progression of her for years that people committed to her story and her character growing. And then what they're doing now just makes no sense. There's no emotional catch with these stories. That goes back to these flat characters and stuff like that, right? What they're doing is that everything is seen as race and or gender. You know what I mean? There's no backstory. What the motivations of these characters? What do they like? What do they do? That they're very two dimensional and flat, which is borderline propaganda. Um, it, I mean, you don't want a story. I want to touch on something here. You don't want a mundane, introduction, a mundane instruction where there's no action. Who cares what cereal they ate that morning when the story starts? People want to get into the action, but without noting the motivation of these characters, what makes them? There's no tension. There's nothing in there that you're watching that makes them interesting to where you're like, oh crap. Uh, they're in a situation, and if you know this character, they're either going to make or break them. You know what pisses them off. You know when a villain has taken a character too far with something that they love, that you're sitting there and you're left on a cliffhanger, and you're like, they're going to fuck them up. You know what I mean? There's nothing like that. There's no tension with them, no emotional catch. No, that's what made Peter Parker such a great character. Do you think it has to do with the attention span of the youth these days that can only handle short stories? Uh, no, I really don't. I think comic books and reading either grabs you or it doesn't. We, I grew up watching MTV, and I was used to like things going very fast, 3 minute videos, 10 minute, 5 to 10 minute MTV news and things like that. And but I could still sit down, and if a story was emotional with a good character and stuff like that, the fact that the Harry Potter books are so good, I'm going to say that overall, I'm going to say no with that. But I'm sure there are people who've never been hooked. They like things fast, so it's a yes or no thing. But I think it's a very small percentage of it. Just to bottom line it, doing this live and you caught me off the hook and stuff. But I'm shooting from the hip here and stuff like that. But could that play a factor? There's more interest. There's people who are interested in video games. There's a lot of competition out there compared to comic books, right? But the stories are so thin and stuff that just like 2 years ago, I wouldn't buy a Marvel book because I could read it in 30 seconds to a minute in the shop. You know, Brian Bendis's Talking Heads took more time. There was no action in there, and then the stories would be very thin and you could fly through them. So I want to say no on that. I want to say no. Comic books just reading the comic books isn't something that really hooks everybody. People can like a story and they have a favorite book, but they're not going to go out and end up making a whole library. You know what I mean? Then I think the Harry Potter books show that the movies, the culture, the kids that grew up on those books and stuff like that. I've seen grown people in their 20s still sit there and discuss things that happened in one book and how that should have affected this one. Trying to please and appeal to too many people, you can't tell that many stories. That's true. That's true. Um, but they don't even know who. But I feel like they're appealing to an invisible audience. I'm going to stand by that. I've said that before. There's an audience they're trying to bring in that either A doesn't exist or they are just. I'm going to put it down to youth to living in a chamber here. Yeah, and there's not a lot of hooking. The emotional catch can be the hook, or the situation that there can be the hook. I'm reading Alan Moore 2000 AD. They full of detail, read to read. Yeah, that's what I mean. They're not thin. The biggest example I can get about hooking people is a Mel Brooks movie, of all things, right? On the commentary in Spaceballs, of all things, Mel Brooks gets that you talk to the audience. He'll give you the plot in 5 minutes. If you watch Spaceballs, it's like Spaceballs is there's this evil empire who's running out of air on their planet, and they want to take the air from another planet and bring it to them, and that's the plot. You get that in 5 minutes, and you've hooked the viewers in the movies and stuff. Now you can get on with the gags and moving the characters and the fun and stuff like that. You get the plot. They don't do that with a lot of Marvel comics. You get they're just mundane. They're just mundane introductions. Like there's no action going on. It's talking heads, people walking down the street trying to indicate that we're for young readers. I saw some panels or something like that of two girls walking down the street and they're talking like Valley Girls from the '80s and saying like every other word and stuff. Um, is that really interesting reading? You want to start with the action. I picked up a lot of things where I've read interviews with Kurt Vonnegut and I've read Isaac Asimov, and there's always these little things that are like clickbait where it says, this writer tells you tricks to writing stories. With a short story, you want to start as close to the end as you can and still keep the reader informed. There's all these little tricks out there. And I just feel like if you're going to be a professional writer of anything, a lot of this stuff could have been taught in a creative writing class, in a community college of all things, in a high school class. I don't know. to be a good writer, you read, and even though and that's what I mean, I've read a whole lot, so it's if you're doing it professionally, that's one of the things they tell you. They tell you to write every day and to read a lot. I don't know. Okay. And then the flawed writing, sentence structure level, awkward dialogue. Marvel comics are full of that, and that's why I think the editors get a hard time. I even saw Tom Brevoort pop up and try to say that you've always seen typos in comics, you just never noticed them. And there are lots of criticism with Secret Empire and all sorts of books and stuff where it's horrible, horrible typos and stuff like that. And that will take it out when it's a professional. When you're paying $5 for a book, for $4.99, $3.99, up to $10 for a book and stuff like that, you don't really expect to see a bunch of typos. And that's what I'm getting at. People here have all these characters with backstory that you can like bounce stories out of by pulling from that. You have consistent characters and stuff. If you're going to create new characters and stuff, I mean, when I did a creative writing class, the actual teacher gave you a syllabus. And in that syllabus was like 3 pages of little questions to ask about each character you wanted to put in a story. Well, how do they get along with their family? How are they with friends? All these little things, details and stuff to where the character forms because living and breathing. And you could take someone like Peter Parker from the 60s up until like the early 80s, and you could have filled that out, and this character, it just becomes more than two-dimensional. And then you would have an idea of how he would react in a situation that caused attention and stuff, right? Now, comic books have always been like a little bit flawed with a lot of writings and things like that are forgivable, or as reading them they were forgivable, or you complained about them went on. One of the things I never really liked, and it was in Spider-Man comics, as great as could be, is that you're in the middle of this great big huge fight. You got maybe bullets coming to you, or you got Doc Ock's arms coming at you. You got a building falling on you, and all this stuff, and you're swinging around, and he could still talk during the fight, or he could still have thought bubbles during a fight, doing all this thinking and stuff, right? And that's just things to keep the story coming along. These guys were trying to put out books on a deadline and stuff. And actually, I found out listening to Jim Shooter that Marvel Comics really never put out all their books on time until he took over. And the printing press came to him and said, this is the first time in Marvel's history that all the books are out on time, right? So I get deadlines and shortcuts and putting out this stuff every month and everything like that, but there's still consistency and character. It's a team project. So when it comes to like Marvel Comics being really bad, me saying that they suck and stuff, this is why. Okay, it's the actual writing techniques, flat characters, two-dimensional characters that they're seeing everything either in A gender or B race, or there's some kind of real political agenda that they're putting in there. These characters don't are two-dimensional; they become symbols of the agenda that they're really putting out. There's nothing like reading a comic and feel like you're getting preached to. Now, the whole thing about it is that there's some people, reading is subjective. There's people that don't mind that, right? But every book has something like that going on. Every book has something insulting towards, a reader and things like that. It's almost like they're not a business anymore. It's really coming off with them that they're, getting off on the social status that they're working in comics. Look at us and stuff. And what kind of hurts some of the business is that here's their job. Here's some things I think could be constructive criticism, but they won't take constructive criticism. They think they know what they're doing already, yet they've never read the backstory of these characters. This is one of the reasons I think Marvel is that as it was from 1961 up to a few years ago is dead and gone. I can't see the people that are working there who admittedly some of these writers have flat out said they have never read comics and stuff like that. They're not going to go back and do the reading and the work and stuff. Yet I remember certain writers from the past taking over a book and they would do the research. Marvel or DC would give them reading material to kind of skim through and get an idea of what they're needing and things. And then you had the editors who knew what the hell they were doing to call out a writer saying, "Oh, you can't do this, or you can't do this, or this would be a good idea. Maybe you could take it that way." It was a team effort, is how they came off. Nice. What are you vaping on, dude? I'm sorry, man, but it's a pen. I should start vaping. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, man. Someone thought that was vaping and stuff, right? So that's it. When I say Marvel sucks, there's no code there, man. It's like their characters, their company. If this is how they want to go with it, man, at least you know, write in a way that you actually have story structure. You have exposition that drives up to a climate. Challenge your characters. It's funny you hear that actors actually take the time to read the comics to get the character down. Michael Gatner, that is a very good point. I have Watchmen right here. I mean, right here. Um, and you have, oh my God, Jeffrey Dean. Oh my God, I'm going blank on the characters, man. The guy that played Rorschach in this, the guy that played comedian, everybody, the actors and stuff. They came out and said, though there is some fascinating research on the depiction of actual. Well, that was a great comment, but it did not stay up long enough for me to read it. But the commentary in this and some of the interviews that are on the special features, everybody read the freaking Watchmen books. When Sin City came out, I wonder if this fact has influenced how Marvel is writing. Okay, it could be. Red Vitamin Blue, when this thing uploads after we're done with the live stream, can you put that back in? I really want to read that later. But anyway, Sin City had people walking up to Robert Rodriguez, Bruce Willis especially, and stuff, where they wanted more of the lines from the comic put into the movie from the Sin City books. The actors get into it and the character, and they kind of get a feel with it, and they still do their thing with it and stuff, right? But at least they go to the source material and the characters and stuff, and they seem to get it as part of their research. These are actors. Whoever said that Michael, that was a very good point with this, right? So even actors are more dedicated to the source material than the people making the books. And when it comes to the movies, just to show the writing and things that how good it was that brought us to where we were and let these characters survive. Yeah, somebody like Tin Samuel liked Secret Empire, the writing, but hated the art. But I'll comment on that in a minute. But even the stories that are getting tapped for the movies, it was because it was solid writing. Better writing than what they're going on now. And they seem to be forgetting that. How far can these movies go if we're not progressing the stories? That helped make the movies. Now, as far as like me picking on Marvel and Secret Empire and stuff like that, I have seen some people that liked it. They liked the story. They hated the art and things like that. It's all subjective. But the thing that led me to make this video is because of the toxic environment right now and things like that. People think you're talking in code and stuff, right? There's things in here that I think Nick Spencer, people are missing, that Nick Spencer went after Marvel and the fans. I mean, there's a comment in there about, I'm sure the outrage on Twitter will be amazing and stuff, right? I have never seen an environment with comics and stuff to where you troll the fans. You you get people who actually try to talk to them on a civil level, and they get attacked and told they're wrong and you're the one with the problem and stuff, right? If you're not open to criticism, you're not going to get better. And we're talking constructive criticism. You're not. I take constructive criticism, it seems like, every day at my job because I'm working with people. He said, yeah, that's bullshit. I'm not sure what part. Yeah. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say, man. Come out here and to clarify why I think Marvel sucks and stuff. They've just abandoned things. I think the Marvel of old is dead and gone unless they get people in who are actually fans of comics and know these characters, or people who take the time to rediscover these characters. Oh, the part about not taking criticism, that's bullshit. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a fact, man. You have to take criticism. Now, I don't think I think in fairness, to be balanced here and stuff like that, having people come at you and say this sucks or that sucks. And I don't think criticism counts if somebody's saying that's not how I would do the story. And that's talking about progressing story, making it unpredictable and things like that. It's what I'm talking about here. There's things that are structures and used in telling a solid story that people can point out to tell you why it's bad, but they're not even open to that. They seem to have this mentality that they are the shit. We know what we're doing, and if you don't like it, it's your problem. That blows my mind. That's just bad all the way around when you insult the fans, even if you're trying to bring in new fans and get rid of the ones that are more aware of what's going on. Um, it's a good thing we had the old comics to go back to. There are some needles in the haystack that are readable and writers trying to make a good story, but overall it's shit. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. There's a lot of people picking up on this, on what's going on. I've said many times in my last few haul videos when I go to these conventions or I talk to my friends and stuff, there's a lot of people backing up. I don't know if it's there's a need. There's people that, you collect comics and you love the hobby and you get into the routine of getting new books, because you can fly through some of this stuff and you go back and reread things. But, the biggest competition I'm seeing is, like I said, Marvel's history. DC's history, all the other books that are coming out. And there's people going back. I've said it before. They're going back and they're telling me about it, and I've seen it, and I'm doing it. They're backing up, and they're getting these older stories, these older runs. Teen Titans. I named them off. Teen Titans. People backing up and joining their Turtles again. They're really going back, and they're getting this stuff that they're. I have a friend. My girlfriend actually started reading the Teen Titans, and she discovered the Wolfman Perez run, and she got it. And she just sent me a photo. May have to wrap this up in a minute. So they're getting it. They're getting it, and they're reading these old books, and it's like when you discover the Ramones or some great big huge band. You end up getting rid of half your record collection or your music collection, or getting rid of a lot of stuff because you can't go back. You've seen quality, you've seen the fun of it, you've seen stuff that's lighter or resonates with you better and stuff. And it's because they use these techniques, subplots, character, mystery. You got Raven. What's her origin? Wolverine. Who was Wolverine really? They got these hooks, and then you go through that emotional turmoil of them wanting to know. You're with them. You're like, you want to know too with them. And you're like, oh, that's got to suck, and things like that. The underdog, the things that just, basically you got to put your characters through hell sometimes and not try to make them perfect and not turn around and just, have it be like, seriously propaganda. That's how it comes off. I think Disney's using Marvel to push their so-called diversity. See, that's just it. That's just it. There's a lot of opinions coming out about what the hell are they doing. And this all stems from the comics being so bad. That's where a lot of these things come from. You try to make sense of it. Um, and who knows what they're doing. You can't say, we don't have the whole picture. We don't know everything that's going on. We just know that these books are bad and they're not responding to them being bad. Sales are down. Comic book shops are going down. It's like it's like Catcher in the Rye. It's like we're walking through the rye field of the guy's dream, if you've read Catcher in the Rye. And in his dream, he's walking through a big rye field, and it's really up high, and he sees all these kids running, and he notices that they're running out of the rye right off a cliff, and he's trying to catch the kids and all that stuff. In the old days, Spidey lost even when he won. I wouldn't have a problem with these diversity characters. They were human as the originals. Just give me my Bruce Banner Hulk back, doggone it. Yeah, see, that's what I'm getting. Now we're having people, saying the same thing. It's like we could go along with what we're doing. We could go along with changes and stuff, but they're being written horribly. There's no organic feel to it. I've seen Marvel try to go back to an ad they had in the late '80s where you had Grey Hulk, Silver Iron Man, Captain America in his black outfit as the captain and all this stuff like that. And the irony is that they're showing better writing about how these characters got there than what they're doing now. Thor in his blue iron suit and his big beard and his belt of strength and stuff. That was because he was cursed by Hela, I think, and his bones would break and not heal, so he had to keep himself together literally in that outfit. And actually, every time he moved, his bones were grinding. The Hulk was turned back to gray because they went back to his backstory of when the Hulk first appeared, he was gray, and then they changed him to green, and it was all about technical colors and stuff like that, right? And Peter David took that, ran with it, and we got a payoff in it. It was an unpredictable plot based on the backstory of him, and we got Mr. Fix-It, Green Hulk, Smart Hulk, Savage Hulk, and it ended up being about abuse. Bruce Banner was abused by his dad, and it gave him dissociative disorder, and he ended up having multiple personalities by the gamma radiation affecting him and making him change different ways. Everything that they showed is much better. Got to go, bud. Great discussion, good points. I wholeheartedly agree in the current horrible writing, character development. I appreciate it, Dr. Silbrace. I'm not going to be on here much longer. So that's what I mean. Every time Marvel tries to defend themselves by responding to this criticism by saying, hey, you might have a point or we could be better and stuff, Did you think Jack Kirby could happen today in a world of digital illustration? Seems to me that a lot of his style was because of the limitations of print. But I'll get to that in a minute about Kirby. But yeah, and that's what I mean. Anything that Marvel tries to bring up from their past to say we've done this stuff before, no, you haven't. That stuff was set up. Uh, you know, would come. It wasn't a boring plot. It wasn't predictable. The characters still stayed the same. You weren't replacing them with 2D bad characters with no motivation and they were flat and stuff. As far as Kirby happening today, I'm a Kirby fan, so I'm very biased. And I think we got Mr. Miracle that came out. I showed Mr. Miracle earlier today in a video, right? The Tom King Mr. Miracle. Well, there's a lot of bad writing in older comics too. I think the difference is the writers themselves these days antagonize some of their fans in social media, and that doesn't help. That's right. But yeah, Kirby could have happened today because that man was a fan of sci-fi in comics, in movies. And if he had lived on a different coast instead of the East Coast, he probably would have been working in movies and stuff. And Kirby has influenced so much stuff. He's a breath of fresh air. That man's imagination that came out of his hand was the first thing there. When you're reading the comic, it'll turn you off. Yeah, yeah. That's one of the reasons I don't read Marvel books and stuff anymore because of what I've seen on social media. You can't get away from it. If I don't see it myself, somebody will pop up in a video. If it doesn't pop up in a video, it'll be one of my friends telling me about it. Then I get curious and go check it out. And I've actually had a little back and forth with some of these creators, and I back out because I kind of watch myself. But yeah, that's what I'm getting at. People are speaking out about it, and you can't be wrong. You know what I mean? Not everybody can be wrong. Reading is subjective. They have a book or two that's probably really good, but overall, with the plan they're doing, comic book shops, the proof's in the pudding. And it all goes back to storytelling and my ideas. This is entertainment. We get books to read, to be entertained. Some people have grown up with these characters. Um, and I can't put it any more simple than that. I'm not waving the flag to save Marvel. To me, Marvel is dead. I'm not waving the flag of what their political agenda and stuff like that. It's their company, their characters. I'm out. You just don't get my money. What does Marvel need to do now to fix it, though? Retcon again and put out new number one with good writing? I don't have the answer for that, but I can tell you people in comic books have people who, seasoned collectors and new collectors and stuff, long memories. Okay, this is something I'm confident about, right? I've said it before. There are too many solo books these days. They need one main story a year, and each book is a solo, is a smaller, connected. I get what you're saying. But as far as what Marvel, they need to really understand their audience. These are people, including me. We have long memories. We read as a hobby. In our mind, we keep a continuity in our head of the events of the heroes and things like that for fun. There's a part of us that, Marvel started the continuity. And people committed to it, and Marvel used to interact with the fans, and you could get a no prize if you explained, where they screwed up in continuity. They made a game of it and stuff, kept it light and fun, and you can interact, and they would talk with you and stuff, right? And then, to say that they don't, what they do now is they just abandon all of that. I think I lost my train of thought. Is it an organized conspiracy, or are they just aloof idiots completely misreading the culture? I think it's a bunch of people who, be honest with you, I think it's a narcissism thing. I think there's a lot of people that think they're doing good for some cause. You know what I mean? And they just don't get it. They really think they are the hero in a Harry Potter book. As far as conspiracy and stuff like that, I think eventually Disney may get rid of the Marvel comics and stuff. It's all movies where their money is made. Who knows? I mean, it's an organization that looks at quarterly reports, and they own a lot of stuff. How much attention are they really giving to the comics? They've got 50, 60 years of backlogs, stories to pull from for the movies. Who knows? I don't work at Disney, but definitely something is going on. Somebody's, the lunatics are running the asylum. That's all there is to it, so who knows? All right. Okay, guys, I'll give you a chance to ask a few more questions. Got a little bit off topic, but that's cool. I love the questions. A lot of people watching, and I've got some messages come in that I'm going to have to answer here to get on with my day. I got some stuff I want to be putting on eBay. So if you got any more questions, I'm going to drink my coffee and I want to turn around and see if any pop up. If not, we'll call it a day. All right. Okay, guys. That's it. Thanks everybody for doing it. Red Vitamin Blue, if you're still watching, please put your comments back in with this uploads. I love your comments. They're always smart and makes me think. Oh, here we go. Any new indies to pick up? Good conversation. Thanks. Hillbilly is a good indie that I like and enjoy. I'm really not getting that many new books, but I think Hillbilly is one of the better indies to get out there. Um, and that's by Eric Powell through El Albatross Press. What were you saying about Mr. Miracle? You dropped it off mid thought. Oh, Mr. Miracle. I wonder what I was saying about it. Mr. Miracle is Tom King brings in. It was in the previous video. People were saying how it's a fresh breath air, and I like how it hooked me. And it's something that Tom King is going through. To me, it's strong storytelling. It's just enough to give you an introduction to what these next, I think it's 12 issues, are going to be. It hooks you in. Here's Mr. Miracle. You open up that first page and get to the splash page and you're hooked. There's this circumstance that Mr. Miracle is in. And then you're reading the story and you're picking up things here and there's a rhythm to it. The visuals and the writing gave it a very surreal feel to where you're in for the ride and there's just enough of a catch, a hook, a mystery to make you want to get the next issue, even though it didn't have a really dramatic cliffhanger compared to some other stuff you can read, right? So it's unique, it's a breath of fresh air, it's not predictable, and it rounded off scot-free. Now, I'm one of those people that this mini Mr. Miracle mania that's going on kind of blew my mind. I've known Mr. Miracle since I was 5, and I was Kirby stuff and his Justice League stuff, and it's really blown my mind that, and I blame it on two things: Tom King's good writing and the state of comics today, to where there really is a vacuum for some really good writers to come in and blow people away. Yeah. All right, appreciate it, guys. People are dropping off. We're hitting 45 minutes. I've got messages coming in. I've really enjoyed this. Maybe I'll do another one today. Thanks for everybody hooking in there. And I apologize for rushing off here, but I thought this was going to be like 20 minutes, man. So thanks a lot, guys. Sub, thumb up, share this thing until I get a computer fix. It's going to be live shows with bad quality. So I need all the help I can get until I can get something good. Later, guys.